Hey everybody, Gary here with Pow Music, and in this video I want to go over this awesome riff that Stevie Ray Vaughan would play pretty much every time he performed Lenny. So if you watch the live at the El Macambo version or this version I posted, you're going to hear this same exact riff. And it's such a great riff because of how it walks the line between a major sound and a minor sound. And there's a lot of ways we could think of it. We could think of it as the mixing of major and minor pentatonic, or we could think of it as him playing off the chords, playing off the 1 chord, playing off the 4 chord. So I'm going to share a couple different ways that you could think about this and all the different things we could learn just from this one riff and incorporate into our own playing. But ultimately we want to take this idea and make it part of our own vocabulary. So I'm going to show you an example of how you can take these ideas and workshop them, practice them creatively. You don't have to imitate it note for note with the exact same rhythm, but you can incorporate that sound into your own ideas. As always, if you're a patron, you could download the tab sheet. And best of all, if you join, you get instant access to everything I've ever posted on the site for the last 6 years. So all the tab to go along with all of my lessons, and twice weekly 90-minute live Zoom small group guitar lessons that are totally interactive. We all get together twice a week for 90 minutes. We play together, we learn songs together, we go over these concepts live. You could get feedback or just get that great motivation and accountability that goes with being part of a community of like-minded guitar learners. So the link to that is in the description. I'm also going to include for patrons 2 MP3s of the loops I use in this video from E7 to A7, both slow and fast, so you could practice on your own. All right, let's get into it. Now another thing I did is, being that Stevie is tuned down a half step to E flat, I just moved it up a half step using, transposition software to E, so that we don't have to detune our guitars and our hands are in the same place that you see Stevie's hands, which is basically up at the 12th fret, right? So for him it's E flat, for us it's E. Now the song Lenny, the first chord is an E major 7. But once he gets into the B section of this song, it's really an E7. Like a typical blues to an A7. So that's the tonality that we hear. E7 to A7. It's not E major 7 anymore. And we hear that because of the chords that he plays. We hear him actually play an E7 and not an E major 7. Okay, so E7, A7, that's the 1 and the 4 in a blues. So even though Lenny is in a traditional blues, all these ideas are going to work in a traditional blues context. So we start on the 1 chord, E7, with this. And what is that? Well, on this E7, we're playing around this little triad. It's an E major triad. So we play the 5th to the 6th and then to the root. If you're familiar with my lessons, you'll see I often call this little shape the House of Blues. It's a great little pentatonic shape. It's the full pentatonic scale. And in this case, this is the major House of Blues. So as the major House of Blues, it's just that major triad with the added 6th and the added 2nd. And there's so much you could do with it. So that's right out of the major pentatonic. And the 6th gives it that more majory bright sound, right? So that 6th is not part of the minor pentatonic. That's one of those major pentatonic notes. But then he goes. Now that, going to the minor 7th, remember the chord is E7. So now we're going to the minor side of an E7. We could think of an E7 chord as half major, half minor. If we want to accentuate the minor, we go to the minor 7th. That's the minor interval in that chord. That invites minor pentatonic. If we want to accentuate the major 3rd, we could think major pentatonic, right? So we're going back and forth between those two flavors that a dominant 7 chord invites. It invites a major flavor, invites a minor flavor, or both at the same time, right? So then we go to that minor 7. So we play the flat 7, the minor 7, the 5, then we bend the 4 to somewhere between the flat 5, which is the blue note, and the 5. So, right? So really hear the difference. This is the 4, this is the 5, this is the flat 5. This is 4 to flat 5, 4, and this is 4, 5, 4. And what we hear Stevie do, it's somewhere in between. So that's one of those notes you could experiment with, going to the 4 to the flat 5, or the, hear the difference? This is to the 5, this is to the flat 5, and then this is the minor 3, this is the minor 3 bent to the major 3. So, right, those little subtle flavorings are what give the blues phrasings its sound, like that ambiguity between the 5 and the flat 5, that ambiguity between the minor 3 and the major 3, that in-between sounds. So flat 7, 5, bend somewhere between flat 5, 5, back to 4, then bend on that flat 3. Right, we're going to bend that minor 3 so that it's not quite the major 3, but somewhere in between. That's that kind of blue 3. It's not a minor 3, it's not a major 3, it's in between. And you could hear Stevie just push up on it a little bit. So, then to the root, and then he ends on the major 6. But now, when he ends on the major 6, we're on the 4 chord. So on the 1, it's now, so when we come down to that major 6, it's not as simple as saying mixing major and minor pentatonic. He's coming down to the major 3rd of the 4 chord. That's a chord tone. He's playing into the chords. Hey everybody, I just want to interrupt the lesson for a minute to say that if you want to take your guitar playing to the next level and gain a complete understanding of how music works on the fretboard, then come join me for the next cohort of the fretLIVE Fretboard Mastery Program, limited to 40 students. So this is going to be the summer 2024 cohort coming up, but whenever you watch this, the link will be to the next upcoming live cohort. By taking this course, you'll be able to connect the sounds you hear with the underlying intervals, and you'll be able to identify and combine these intervals on your own to create the chords and scales that are the building blocks of the songs and sounds that we know and love. Using powmusic's unique fretLIVE fretboard animation system, you'll be guided step by step over the course of 12 units towards a complete working knowledge of the basics of harmony on the guitar fretboard. We start at the very beginning by exploring all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, seeing them as intervals, and then we start to put those intervals together to create a key, the scales, chords, and chord progressions of a key all over the neck, including major and minor diatonic and pentatonic scales, the cage system, triads, 7th chords, sus chords, 9th chords, 6th chords, and other cool chords, and finally finishing up with modes. With each concept we go over, there is a song learning and creative challenge so that you're actually applying what you learned to make music. For the live version of this course, you'll have access to 2 live Zoom classes with myself and your classmates each week. One is a morning class, one's an evening class to accommodate different time zones since there's people from all over the world, and a private group to share your work and cheer on your classmates. This really helps for motivation and accountability, and it's my favorite aspect of the course. However, if you prefer to take the course on your own, there's a self-paced version for 50% off, which includes all of the course content and live lesson replays, but you won't have the live experience with myself and classmates. Over 1,400 students have taken their guitar playing to the next level through this course, and some students have continued to rejoin the live cohorts up to 5 times, such as Mike R. Thanks, Mike. The link to enroll and to watch a video trailer with student testimonials is in the description. All right, back to the lesson. Now, we don't know Stevie's concept. I mean, Stevie played the blues tons, so we don't know how he's thinking of it, or if he's hearing it, right? But what I'm trying to help you do is connect the sound to the context, right? What we're hearing to the context of the music, right? So we get to that 4 chord, and he lands on the major 3rd. of the 4 chord, which is A7. So right? So we got so we want to know, it's really, these riffs are all about what chords are going on at the same time. So the second part of the riff, now we're on that 4 chord, and he already came down to this note, but now he comes to the flat 7 of the 4 chord, right? So on this A7, this note right here, 12th fret of the G string, the note G, that is the minor 7th in this A7 chord. So he starts on that note, comes down the major pentatonic to the major 2nd of the key, to the 5th of the chord. So this really outlines the chord A7, right? He starts on the flat 7 and then just walks down to the 5th of the 4 chord. And then he goes the 3rd to the 5th again. So he's really just playing on the A7. So this is the thing. The reason why major pentatonic and minor pentatonic of the key E work so well is because there's some really special chord tones in the E major pentatonic that really fit on the other chords, like the 4 chord. So as you start exploring mixing these scales together, you're going to hear, oh, okay, hitting on the major pentatonic over the 4 chord really gives me some of those chord tones I'm looking for of the 4 chord, like the major 3rd of the 4 chord. But the minor pentatonic gives me the minor 7th of the 4 chord. So there's just, it's that they both work, and mixing them just gives you this beautiful sound. So hopefully this riff is going to give you a bunch of ideas, as short as it is. Okay, so then after, then he goes just a double stop into the E7 to get back to the E7. And what are those notes? That's the flat 7 and the major 3rd. Those are the 2 notes that really give this chord its sound. And that interval, just so you know, it's called a tritone or a diminished 5th. That tension is what characterizes the sound of a dominant 7 chord. 1, major 3rd, perfect 5th, minor 7th. So between the major 3rd and the minor 7th, we have a tritone or a diminished 5th. Here's a cool little thing. You can literally play a 12-bar blues just with this little double stop. Let's say we were going to play an E blues. This is flat 7 and major 3rd. Then on the 4 chord, this is major 3rd, this is flat 7. And then on the 5 chord, this is major 3rd, this is flat 7. So watch this. I could play a full 12-bar blues just with this double stop. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Right? Cool, right? All right, so summarizing. So one great way to practice this would be to just loop E7 to A7, right? So let me do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so You know, when you're practicing the riff, just to nail it first, you want to make sure your rhythm is right. Like, am I coming in at the right time? And it's not because you want to be a copycat. You just want to literally be able to replicate what you hear. That's part of ear training. So can I play it exact to start? How exact can I get? And so there's the timing, like knowing, okay, the riff comes in on the end of 2. 1 and 2, ba da ba da ba do ya ba da ba da. Right? Getting that timing down. Then, you know, breaking it into pieces. So for me, if you look really closely, that note on the high E string, Stevie doesn't pick, he pulls it with his fingernail or just with his fingertip because he wants it to really pop. So one thing I struggle with is that's kind of hybrid picking. Getting that real snap. So I want to work on that. I also want to work on this kind of vibrato on the high E string. My vibrato is way better on other strings. So I want to work on that. Also on this guitar, my high E string really rolls right off the fretboard, so it's a little extra challenging. So I could just loop that. Watch this. Really relax. I feel a little tension. I'm just gonna try to relax into it. Right? Then the second phrase. Right? The challenge on that is right, getting that bend, drop, bend. Put the first two together. Right? Okay, so that's how we get the riff, right? We could also slow it down, right? So I'm gonna redo my loop at a slower tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. Right? And then same thing, doing the one riff at a time. So I'm just going to do that opening riff. And 1 and 2. Okay, now we want to workshop the riff. I'm going to play around with I'm going to change when the riff starts, when it ends. I'm going to start it the same way, finish it a different way. Just totally workshop it. Like, try to say it in a sort of different way. So if the phrase was try to say it in a sort of different way, if that's a sentence I want to workshop, I'd say, I'm going to attempt to vocalize it slightly differently. I'm going to try to say it in a slightly different way. I'm going to attempt to say it in a slightly different manner, right? Like various ways to say the same thing. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Let me try that again. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Something like that. I'm getting kind of jazzy. So, you know, you have to be listening to the chords to really workshop the riff. You got to understand, like, okay, that riff is the sound of that chord. That riff is the sound of that chord. All right, everybody, happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson. And before I go, I just want to extend a huge thank you to the following Pow Music patrons: Jason, Shogun7, Nick P, Billy Paps, Pete Elliott, Sean Westfall, Wes Williams, Eric Pillez, Darren Jones, Dr. Ixlin, Andy, Dennis McNulty, Paul Weatherall, Hal Jones, T. Fletch, Dmitry Unkovsky, Greg, Joe, Wayne Evans, Jeff Lambert, Jorge Vaz, Jack Williams, Joe Prengle, LW, Dave Hubner, Fred Locke, Ruben Garcia, Kay Carter, Steve C., Jens Fischer, Joseph Alpert, Mu Zhang, Darren, Jonas, Jesse Jacobs, David McPherson, Michael L., Brent Owens, Andrew Gunthart, Jay Brilliant, Jake Martin, William Creighton, Donald James Grass, Chris Freeman, Stephen Pisano, Trampus Thompson, Kent Gresham, John Cushman, Bob Shetty, Derek Mickle, Sean Ellis, Jeff Weatherwax, Boomer Dell, and Joe Fleck. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of the Pow Music patrons for helping to make it possible to provide all this free content here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Happy playing. I'll see you next time.